how long is the susceptibility to a subsequent concussion higher following a concussion? So, I mean, I'm sure everybody who's watched football highlights has noticed I think it was the quarterback for the Dolphins last year. I mean, just had a series of devastating concussions, and you couldn't help but think, was the subsequent concussion really a result of not being, better from the first one? I mean, how long is that that vulnerability present?
Yeah, not talking about that case specifically, but generally speaking, there is a definite vulnerability when you're recovering from an initial injury, and that less force will cause more serious outcome if you're still recovering from the first event. And
Do you
we know,
ever get back to baseline?
yes, absolutely. Um,
Okay.
I firmly believe, and we've published a lot of papers on this, that concussion is a treatable injury. I firmly believe that if you manage the injury effectively and treat it fully, we don't see repetitive, chronic, cumulative problems. I firmly believe that the best way to prevent problems from concussion is to manage it effectively when you have one. And we are very good now at determining recovery and what that looks like, and that looks in our examination, how that looks with the testing that we do and the data points that we use. I am a big proponent of kids playing sports. I'm a big proponent of really manage this injury effectively and getting kids back to the sports they love, because it's a very healthy thing for them to be doing. And we haven't found problems down the road in patients that are managed effectively. Now, the key here, though, Peter, is to manage it effectively when you have one, and you don't want to stack these things up. And people that do can get in trouble with it. And this is becoming a very specialist kind of thing to see. You want to go to someone that knows what they're doing to manage this injury effectively when you have one. You want to make sure you're getting the right assessment done, the right tools, because there's definite morbidity when this isn't managed properly, for sure.
Let's go back to the person, the athlete, the non-athlete, whatever, who has the head injury. So we've already established we have no biomarker, right? So
Correct.
This person gets their bell rung, be it in a car accident or on the football field, and it's a clinical diagnosis. So tell me, if you're at the sidelines or if you're in the clinic when the person shows up the next day, what are they typically complaining of, and what are you doing to make that diagnosis?
So there's approximately 21 different symptoms on the field that you can see following concussion. And it depends on what type of concussion you have. There are signs and there are symptoms of injury. Signs are what you outwardly observe. Symptoms are what the patient reports. Signs of concussion include loss of consciousness. It includes confusion. It includes balance issues. It includes vomiting. Those are all signs of injury. Symptoms of injury are dizziness, fogginess or feeling detached, feeling one step behind, light sensitive, noise sensitive, nauseous, fatigued, blurred vision, double vision, fuzzy vision.
Headache.
Headache, of course. Yeah. Thank you for that one. Another is, post-traumatic amnesia, retrograde amnesia, loss of memory before the injury, loss of memory after the injury. We've done a lot of research looking at these different signs and symptoms and their relative ability to predict outcomes. I'll give you $20, Peter, if you tell me the on-field symptom that best predicts a longer recovery from concussion.
I mean, I would have guessed loss of consciousness, but that seems too obvious.
Yeah, that would be obvious, and it's incorrect actually.
Mm-hmm.
On-field dizziness is 6 times more predictive than any other symptom of predicting a longer out from concussion. And
Wow.
the second symptom that best predicts outcome is fogginess, kind of feeling one step behind, detached, removed. Dizziness is 6 times more likely to cause a longer being a month or longer of recovery than is losing consciousness.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And what's interesting about that is really interesting, is that the symptoms of injury way better predict poor outcome than the signs of injury. And the reason for that is because if you lose consciousness, it's very unlikely you're going to go back to play. Like, you're not going to get put back to play if you lose consciousness, unless you're in some archaic sport, or in some geographical area that has been exposed to this information, right? So when you lose consciousness, you get taken out of play and you're not going to get put back to play. That may be why these symptoms predict worse outcomes, because a lot of patients tend to play through their injury. We just published a paper, and we've published a series of papers in Pediatrics, JAMA, and other journals where we looked at, we asked the question, if patients have a head injury and they have symptoms of concussion, what happens if we take them out of play immediately, or what happens if they continue to play, and what do their outcomes look like? And so we did this very cool study.
Sorry, this is not done prospectively. This is done retrospectively?
Retrospectively, right. Because it's hard to do prospectively.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
But retrospectively, we looked at a very large database. We had about, I think, 300 kids in the sample. 150 of them had symptoms of or signs of concussion, and they came out of play immediately. And then 150 of them continued to play after having those signs and symptoms, okay? The people that got taken out of play immediately, their average recovery time was 18 days. And patients who returned to play and played for just 15 minutes beyond the point of their injury or point of having symptoms, their average recovery time was 44 days. So just playing 15 minutes through this event added almost, close to a month onto the recovery.
And now how are you able to control for the severity of the initial event? Presumably there's a bias there, right? Which is that the kids who came out right away, I don't know, they maybe they were more in tune with something. It's hard to do that without randomization, right?
We did control for a lot of factors. No group lost consciousness more than another group. No group had more symptoms, specific symptoms than another group. So we were able to statistically control for that. But and
it's such a big difference. 18 to 44 days is a big enough difference that even if it's not exactly that there seems to be a signal somewhere in there.
There is. And then we did another paper, follow-up paper, we looked at dose response, and it's really powerful. So for every minute you try to play through your injury, you add on like 7 or 8 days of recovery. It's
wow.
Quite powerful. And so, yeah, you don't want to play through this stuff, and a lot of kids and parents may not be aware that getting dizzy on the sideline is the most powerful predictor of outcome, or feeling foggy or feeling tired, or, blurred vision, double vision. I mean, I played sports my whole life, as I'm sure you did, Peter. I wouldn't come out of play if I had those symptoms. I probably wouldn't report it at all, and we need to do a really good job of educating parents on that. But at the same token, I want kids to play sport. I'm not fear-mongering here. I truly believe this is an injury that's treatable and we can get kids back to the sports they love. But it just shows you the differences in outcomes when it's not managed properly initially early on. And then we're getting now into all our research looking at how we treat this injury, which we're doing really well with. And we can get kids better faster by applying certain treatments and get them back to play sooner.